boardroom erupts in chaos as Sarah Jenkins steps forward, her janitor's uniform a stark contrast against the mahogany table where powerful men in $1,000 suits sit frozen in shock. "I hereby exercise my authority as majority shareholder to terminate your positions, effective immediately," she declares, her voice steady as a steel blade. But what happened next shocked everyone in that room, including the security cameras that captured every devastating second. But let's rewind 24 hours to when Sarah was still just the invisible woman who emptied their trash cans and cleaned their coffee rings. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead in the 42nd floor offices of Hartwell Industries, casting harsh shadows across Sarah's weathered face as she pushes her cleaning cart down the marble hallway. It's 11:30 p.m. on a Tuesday, and downtown Chicago stretches endlessly beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, its lights twinkling like distant stars she'll never reach. Her shoulders ache from 12 hours of scrubbing, mopping, and picking up after executives who earn more in a day than she makes in 6 months. Sarah pauses outside the boardroom, fishing her keys from the pocket of her faded uniform. The fabric has been washed so many times it's lost its original blue color, now a dull gray that matches the exhaustion in her brown eyes. Those student loan payments aren't going to make themselves $847 due in 6 days, and her checking account shows $23.14. The cruel mathematics of poverty play on repeat in her mind as she unlocks the door. The boardroom gleams with polished perfection. Leather chairs that cost more than her monthly rent, a conference table that could seat 20, and walls lined with portraits of past company directors dating back to 1952. Sarah has cleaned this room 1,000 times, but tonight something's different. Voices echo from the adjacent office, and she recognizes the sharp, condescending tone immediately. "Did you see her today? That janitor." Jacob Thompson's voice carries through the thin walls. Sarah freezes, her spray bottle halfway to the table's surface. "I mean, come on, Melissa." The woman looks like she hasn't seen a mirror in years. Sarah's jaw tightens, but she continues cleaning, moving closer to the shared wall. 23 years of service to this company, and this is how they see her. "Oh, Jacob, you're terrible." Melissa Carter's laugh is like breaking glass. "But seriously, how does someone let themselves go like that? I spend more on my weekly manicure than she probably makes in a week. It's almost embarrassing to have her around when clients visit." The spray bottle trembles in Sarah's grip. She scrubbed blood out of carpets when Jacob cut himself on a broken whiskey glass during a late-night celebration. She's worked through her own fever to ensure Melissa's office was spotless for her morning meetings. She's been here longer than both of them combined, watching them climb corporate ladders while she remained invisible. The best part is, she probably thinks this job is going somewhere. Jacob continues, "Like cleaning toilets is some kind of career path. Some people just don't have what it takes to rise above their circumstances." Little did they know that Sarah Jenkins had been listening to conversations like this for decades, filing away every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every moment they treated her like furniture with a heartbeat. Sarah sets down her supplies and walks quietly to the wall of portraits, her eyes scanning the faces of men who once ruled this corporate kingdom. Her fingers trace the frame of a particular portrait, Harold Jenkins, company director 1975 to 1989. Her father's kind eyes seem to watch her from the photograph, and for a moment, she's 8 years old again, listening to his bedtime stories about building something meaningful, about treating every person with dignity. She pulls out her phone and opens her banking app one more time. $23.14. The number hasn't changed, but something inside her has. This decision would change everything, not just for her, but for every person who'd ever been dismissed, overlooked, or treated as less than human in these gleaming halls. Sarah finishes her cleaning in silence, but her mind races with memories that have been buried for 34 years. As she locks the boardroom door, she doesn't head toward the service elevator like she has every night for over 2 decades. Instead, she walks to the main elevator, presses the button for the executive floor, and rides up into the darkness where the real secrets of Hartwell Industries wait to be uncovered. But the real shock was still coming. because tomorrow's board meeting would reveal a truth that Jacob and Melissa never saw coming, one that would strip away their power faster than Sarah could empty their waste paper baskets. Sarah's hands trembled as she sat in her small studio apartment, staring at the manila envelope her father had left for her before his sudden death 3 years ago. She had never opened it, too consumed with grief and the immediate need to survive. But after tonight's humiliation in the boardroom, something had shifted inside her. The envelope contained a small brass key and a leather-bound journal filled with her father's meticulous handwriting. As she flipped through the pages, her breath caught. Her father, Robert Jenkins, hadn't been just any employee at Blackstone Corporation. He had been the chief financial officer until his abrupt resignation 5 years before his death. "Lucy, you need to see this," Sarah whispered into her phone, calling her closest friend who worked as a paralegal downtown. Within an hour, Lucy Martinez sat beside Sarah on the worn couch, both women hunched over the journal under the dim lamplight. "Listen to this entry from March 2018, Sarah read aloud. "Jacob Thompson approached me today with a proposal that made my stomach turn. He wants to redirect pension funds into a shell company he controls with Melissa Carter. When I refused, he threatened to destroy my career. I fear I may have to resign to protect the employees' futures, but I'm gathering evidence first." Lucy's eyes widened. "Sarah, your father was trying to protect people. That's why he left the company." The journal revealed a pattern of financial manipulation spanning years. Jacob and Melissa had been systematically embezzling funds meant for employee benefits, using their positions to cover their tracks. But what stunned Sarah most was the final entry, dated just weeks before her father's resignation. "I've hidden the evidence where only Sarah will think to look. The brass key opens a safety deposit box at First National. If something happens to me, she'll know what to do. My daughter has always been braver than she knows." Sarah felt tears streaming down her cheeks. All these years, she had believed her father abandoned his principles for money, never knowing he had sacrificed his career to protect others. Meanwhile, across town in the corporate tower, board member Tom Lewis paced his office, troubled by what he had witnessed in recent months. A former prosecutor turned businessman, Tom had joined Blackstone's board hoping to bring ethical leadership to the company. Instead, he found himself increasingly isolated as Jacob and Melissa consolidated power. Tom's phone buzzed with a text from Jacob. "Board meeting tomorrow at 9 a.m. We need to discuss the cleaning staff situation. Some of them are getting too comfortable." The message made Tom's stomach churn. He had seen how Jacob and Melissa treated the support staff, and it reminded him why he had left law enforcement to fight corruption from within the corporate world. Back in her apartment, Sarah studied the brass key in the lamplight. Her father's words echoed in her mind. "She'll know what to do." For the first time since entering that boardroom earlier tonight, Sarah felt a spark of her old fire returning. The same determination that had gotten her through college while working 3 jobs. The same resilience that kept her going after her father's death. Lucy grabbed Sarah's hand. "What are you thinking?" Sarah looked up, her eyes now clear and focused. "I'm thinking it's time I honored my father's memory properly. Jacob Thompson and Melissa Carter have been stealing from people like us for years. They think they can mock me because I'm just the janitor, but they have no idea who they're dealing with." The next morning, Sarah stood outside First National Bank, the brass key clutched in her palm. Her heart pounded as she approached the safety deposit box vault, knowing that whatever lay inside would change everything. But as she inserted the key and heard the lock click open, Sarah had no idea that Tom Lewis was at that very moment walking into the Blackstone building, carrying his own battle plans against the corruption that had poisoned the company they both cared about. What Sarah would discover in that safety deposit box would give her the ammunition she needed, but would she have the courage to use it against some of Chicago's most powerful business leaders? The old brass key trembles in Sarah's hand as she approaches the executive filing cabinet at 3 in the morning. The building is eerily quiet, save for the distant hum of the heating system and her own rapid heartbeat. She slides the key into the lock, and it turns with a satisfying click that echoes through the darkened office. Inside, manila folders line the cabinet like soldiers in formation. Sarah's fingers dance across the labeled tabs until she finds what she's looking for. Financial records, executive compensation. Her father's final diary entry had mentioned this exact filing location, written in his careful script just days before his mysterious resignation 15 years ago. As she opens the first folder, her breath catches. Bank statements, wire transfers, and accounting documents paint a picture of systematic embezzlement spanning nearly 2 decades. Jacob Thompson's signature appears again and again, authorizing transfers to shell companies and phantom consultants. But what makes Sarah's stomach drop is seeing Melissa Carter's initials alongside many of the transactions, dating back to when Sarah was still in high school. They've been stealing from the company for years, Sarah whispers to herself, photographing each document with shaking hands. While employees like Mom struggled with healthcare costs they couldn't afford. The next morning, Sarah finds herself in the employee break room, nursing her 3rd cup of coffee when Tom Lewis approaches her table. The youngest board member looks haggard, his usually pristine suit wrinkled and his tie loosened. He glances around nervously before sitting across from her. "Sarah, isn't it?" he asks, though they've never been formally introduced. "I've been watching you work. You care about this place." Sarah studies his face carefully. More than some people realize. Tom leans forward, lowering his voice. "I need to tell you something. There's going to be a board meeting today, and I'm calling for a vote of no confidence against Jacob's leadership. The company is hemorrhaging money, and I suspect it's not just poor management." Sarah feels her pulse quicken. This could be the opportunity she's been waiting for. But can she trust him? "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I've seen how the other board members treat you, and it's disgraceful. But more than that, I think you know things about this company that could help me understand what's really going on." Sarah makes a split-second decision. "Meet me in conference room C in 10 minutes. And Tom, come alone." When Tom arrives, Sarah has already spread out copies of the documents across the conference table. His face goes pale as he processes what he's seeing. "My God, Sarah, how long has this been going on?" "At least 20 years, based on what I can prove. Jacob and Melissa have been siphoning money through fake consulting fees and inflated vendor contracts. They've stolen millions from this company while honest employees got laid off during budget cuts." Tom runs his hands through his hair. "This explains everything. The quarterly shortfalls, the sudden need for downsizing last year. They've been bleeding the company dry. The question is," Sarah says, studying his reaction carefully, "what are you willing to do about it?" But wait. There's something Sarah hasn't told Tom yet. Something that could change everything about how they approach this situation. Tom looks up from the documents, determination replacing the shock in his eyes. "Whatever it takes to stop them. But Sarah, this is dangerous. If Jacob finds out what we know before we can act, then we better move fast," Sarah replies, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they're planning. "The annual shareholder meeting is next week. That's our chance to expose everything in front of the people who really matter, the shareholders who've trusted their investments to these thieves." As they begin plotting their strategy, neither of them notices the security camera in the corner of the room, its red recording light blinking steadily. Someone else now knows about their alliance, and the next few days will determine whether justice prevails or whether Sarah's quest for truth will be silenced forever. The real question isn't whether they can gather enough evidence. It's whether they'll survive long enough to use it. The morning of the shareholder meeting arrives with an electric tension crackling through the downtown Chicago air. Sarah stands in her small apartment bathroom, staring at her reflection as she adjusts the modest blazer she bought yesterday with her last bit of savings. Her hands shake slightly as she grips the sink's edge, taking deep breaths to steady her nerves. "You can do this," she whispers to herself, thinking of her father's words from his diary entries. Truth has a way of rising to the surface. At precisely 8 a.m., Sarah approaches the gleaming corporate building, her heart pounding with anticipation. But as she swipes her employee keycard at the main entrance, the red light blinks mockingly. Access denied. She tries again, confusion washing over her face. Then a cold realization settles in her stomach. I'm sorry, ma'am, but your access has been temporarily suspended. The security guard informs her, checking his computer screen with practiced indifference. Sarah's mind races. Someone knows. Someone has been watching her movements, monitoring her every step. The weight of defeat begins to settle on her shoulders when she hears a familiar voice behind her. Sarah? Is there a problem here? She turns to see Tom Lewis approaching, his own keycard already in hand. His expression shows genuine concern, but there's something else in his eyes, determination mixed with what looks like barely contained excitement. My access has been revoked, Sarah explains, her voice barely above a whisper. Someone must have discovered what we're planning. Tom's jaw tightens as he processes this information. For a moment, Sarah wonders if this is where he'll abandon their alliance, choosing self-preservation over justice. Instead, he surprises her by stepping forward with renewed resolve. Well, that's not going to stop us today, Tom declares, badging them both through the security turnstiles. You're with me as my special advisor for today's meeting. No one can question that. As they ride the elevator to the executive floor, Sarah clutches the manila folder containing her father's documentation and her own carefully compiled evidence. The familiar ding of each passing floor sounds like a countdown to destiny. You know, once you do this, there's no going back, Tom warns, his voice gentle but serious. Jacob and Melissa have powerful connections beyond this company. They won't just disappear quietly into the night. Sarah meets his gaze with steely determination. My father tried to do the right thing and they destroyed his reputation, his career, everything he worked for. I won't let them continue hurting innocent people just to protect their lavish lifestyles. The elevator doors open to reveal the bustling conference room where shareholders are already gathering. Sarah recognizes many faces from the company's annual reports and financial publications, people who've trusted their investments to this corporation for decades, completely unaware of the corruption festering at its heart. As Sarah and Tom enter the room, she notices Jacob Thompson's sharp intake of breath when he spots her. He leans over to whisper something urgent to Melissa Carter, whose perfectly manicured fingers immediately reach for her phone. The panic in their eyes tells Sarah everything she needs to know about who orchestrated her access revocation. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting moderator announces, we'll begin with our quarterly financial report, followed by the board's strategic initiatives presentation. Sarah takes her seat in the designated area for advisors and staff, her folder weighing heavy in her lap. She watches as Jacob steps to the podium, his usual confident smirk firmly in place, as he begins discussing profit margins and growth projections. But she notices the slight tremor in his hands as he grips the microphone. 20 minutes into Jacob's presentation, Tom stands and clears his throat. If I may interrupt, I believe we have some additional matters that require immediate shareholder attention. The room falls silent as all eyes turn to Tom, then follow his gesture towards Sarah. She rises on unsteady legs, feeling the weight of her father's memory and every late night she spent cleaning these very floors. My name is Sarah Jenkins, she begins, her voice growing stronger with each word. Many of you probably recognize me as the woman who empties your trash cans and vacuums your offices. But today, I'm here as the daughter of former executive director Robert Jenkins, and I have evidence that will fundamentally change how you view this company's leadership. The room erupts in surprised murmurs as Jacob's face drains of all color. Melissa half rises from her chair, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. But just as Sarah begins to open her folder, the conference room doors burst open with a force that makes everyone turn. What happens next will determine not just the fate of the corrupt board members, but the very soul of the company itself. Sarah's voice cuts through the boardroom chaos like a knife through silk. There's something else you all need to hear, she announces, her hands trembling slightly as she reaches into her worn jacket pocket. The shareholders lean forward, their faces a mixture of shock and anticipation. Jacob sits frozen in his leather chair, his earlier smugness replaced by the pallor of a man watching his empire crumble. My father, Daniel Jenkins, didn't just work for this company. Sarah continues, her voice growing stronger with each word. He loved it. He believed in what we could accomplish together. She pulls out a yellowed envelope, sealed with wax that bears the company's original logo. Before he died, he left me this letter. I was never supposed to read it unless the company faced its darkest hour. The room falls silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Sarah's fingers work carefully to break the seal, and she unfolds the handwritten pages with reverence. Tom stands beside her, his presence a steady anchor in the storm. "My dearest Sarah," she reads aloud, her father's words echoing across the marble-lined boardroom. "If you're reading this, it means the corruption I fought against has finally come to light. I didn't leave this company by choice. I was pushed out because I refused to participate in the embezzlement scheme that Jacob Thompson orchestrated. I have copies of every transaction, every forged signature, every stolen dollar hidden in the foundation of our family home." Gasps ripple through the audience. Jacob shoots to his feet, his face flushed crimson. "This is preposterous. You can't believe the ravings of a disgraced former employee." Sarah's eyes blaze as she continues reading. "I stayed quiet to protect you, Sarah, but I always hoped justice would prevail. The evidence is buried beneath our old oak tree, in the metal box where we used to hide your birthday presents. Use it wisely. Use it to restore the integrity I couldn't save. The company belongs to its people, not its predators." The weight of her father's sacrifice settles over Sarah like a warm embrace. She looks up at the shareholders, many of whom worked alongside her father years ago. Recognition dawns in their weathered faces. They remember Daniel Jenkins, remember his principled stands and quiet dignity. "I retrieved that box last night," Sarah announces, producing a stack of documents that Tom helps her display on the projection screen. Bank statements, forged authorizations, and email chains paint a damning picture of systematic theft spanning nearly a decade. The numbers are staggering: millions diverted from employee pension funds, charity donations rerouted to personal accounts, shareholder dividends artificially deflated to line executive pockets. Melissa Carter, who had been silent since Sarah's initial revelations, suddenly stands and points an accusatory finger at Jacob. "I won't go down for his greed," she shouts, her composed facade finally cracking. "Jacob threatened my family if I didn't cooperate. I have recordings of our conversations, proof that he masterminded everything." The boardroom erupts into pandemonium. Shareholders are on their feet, voices raised in anger and disbelief. Security guards appear at the doors, summoned by Tom's discreet signal. Jacob makes a desperate attempt to leave, but finds his path blocked by a wall of outraged investors who lost their life savings to his schemes. "I demand Jacob Thompson's immediate resignation," calls out Margaret Whitmore, a silver-haired shareholder whose husband's medical bills were affected by the pension fund theft. "And I nominate Sarah Jenkins as interim director. If she has half her father's integrity, she's exactly what this company needs." The vote is swift and decisive. Hands shoot up across the room like a field of wheat bending toward the sun. Sarah's election is unanimous, with Jacob and Melissa's votes meaningless as security escorts them from the building. The woman who scrubbed their toilets 12 hours earlier now holds their fate in her capable hands. 3 months later, Sarah sits at the head of the mahogany conference table where she once emptied wastebaskets in the pre-dawn darkness. Her hair is pulled back in a professional bun, and she wears a navy blazer that belonged to her mother, dignified but unpretentious. Tom, now serving as her chief operating officer, presents the quarterly report with obvious pride. "Employee satisfaction is at an all-time high," he announces to the reformed board of directors. "We've restored full pension contributions, implemented transparent financial reporting, and established the Daniel Jenkins Ethics Foundation to prevent future corruption." Sarah nods, her eyes bright with purpose. "We've also hired a new cleaning staff," she adds with a slight smile. "And I make sure to introduce myself to each of them personally. Every voice in this building matters, from the CEO to the night custodian." The camera pulls back through the floor-to-ceiling windows as Sarah continues addressing her board, her silhouette strong against the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkle below like stars fallen to earth, each one representing a life touched by her courage to stand up for what's right. Justice isn't just about punishing the guilty. It's about lifting up those who've been overlooked, about transforming workplaces where dignity and respect aren't privileges reserved for the executive suite. Sometimes the most powerful person in the room is the one nobody bothers to notice, quietly observing, quietly planning, quietly preparing to change everything. What's your story of standing up against injustice? Share it in the comments below. You never know who might need to hear that courage comes in all forms.